Okay, I think we are live now. Let me double check and make sure everything's actually up. I'm still a bit of a newbie at the whole streaming thing, but yes. Okay, I think we are. Are we live? Are we live? Yes, okay. I think we are officially live. So, let's see. A few updates for this one real quick. First, the kids were just put down for their nap, and I really hope that you can't hear them, but you might hear them on and off, and if so, I apologize. I'm also standing today because my back is not doing great, so I might be moving around a bit more than usual. Also, I'm trying out a few things for this in terms of quality because I had a few comments last time that people couldn't really read the code when rewatching. I don't know if it was worse on like watching it live versus watching it like as it's happening. Hello, Pavilion. Nice to see you. Um, yeah, so I'm going to try a higher quality stream. We'll see if that actually works. And I'm going to try recording it and re-uploading it just to see if that's better. And I also upped the font size. So hopefully this is better. If you were here last time or see this again as a recording, let me know how the quality looks, but we'll see. Let's see. All right. So to recap what we did last time, we basically went through and established the basics of the phonology, just which sort of sounds, but basically letters in this case we're going with. So I have all of that sort of detailed down here for what we kept. And then we went through and came up with like some basic like phonotactics. We came up with our basic word order. We're doing head initial for things. And then we mostly talked about, let me scroll down to like here, what we were going to do and use for like noun cases and names and other types of things like that, like what would actually be relevant going forward. So we don't actually have any like words generated or anything specific, just an outline of the rules that we're going with. Hello, everybody. People are popping in now. Nice to see everybody. Yes, so we're going to have a single case for plurality, probably some sort of affix of some form. I don't know which one yet. Let's see, we're doing a single word, like connector word between possessee and possessor to indicate possession. We're not going to do like an affix of any form. It'll just be like a separate like word almost. I'm not sure what you would call that. Oh, hello, everybody. So we're not doing noun classes, so we just have the plurality case. And then we went through and figured out that when it comes to names, we're going to do a lot of compounding and have some interesting compounding rules. And then I'm going to have honorifics and diminutives when it comes to the names. So I made up a list from last time of the things that we still needed to do, and I worked on some of the like base code to let us do that. So I will show you what we're starting with first. But we need to determine the plurality declension system and what the actual affixes will be. We need to build the compounding rules and adjustments, which I'm not super familiar with what the terminology for this is, but like if you have two things that you're compounding together in a single word, there might be certain cases where if the ending is a certain thing or the start of the other word is a certain things, then they might change when they combine. We also talked about doing, what was it? Let's see if I can find it. Oh, this. We could germinate the consonants to double them to lengthen the sound. So that might be something that we do in that process, or it might just be general syllable generation, I think. And yes, and then we just need to decide what the plurality indicator will be, what the honorific suffixes will be, and what the diminutive suffixes will be. And I can't spell. I apologize. Yeah, and so if anyone like wants to correct me on my terminology or provide me with terminology, because I'm very much a noob here, feel free to throw that in the chat. I have no idea what I'm doing, so okay, I forgot to say this last stream, but the consonant doubling is germinate. Oh, that makes a lot more sense. So where was that? Gemination. No R. Got it. Perfect. Okay, yes. So we might do that too. And let's see. Where is... Yes, okay, so this is our definition of the sounds we have. We came up with a starting like onset nucleus and coda length weights. So this is all just like basic starter stuff. I assume as we start randomly generating things, we'll want to tweak that. We don't have a lot of like custom rules here, whereas I think we'll definitely want certain sounds or syllables or things to be more common, certain clusters to be more common or less common. They get the term from Latin geminis. Oh, okay, that's fun. I like it. I like it. Yeah, that would be a fun thing to include. And it would be a little bit of something different. Yes. So, our builder class, which did not really have much in it before, and I mostly wrote this out because I don't expect anyone to like follow the code, and this is not supposed to be like a coding live stream. But what I have so far is a basic build compound noun method, and we're going to have to flesh this out a lot. And it just takes a list of basically like compounding parts, which I'll show you in a minute. But essentially what it will do is it'll sort the parts based off our word order, or our, I already forgot what it actually is called, but we're head initial here. And then it's going to combine them and do the declensions for plurality if necessary. And we'll basically end up with that sorted, declined parts. And then from there, we'll combine them. And this method, which is, where is that? That's up in our compounding noodles, is essentially where we will build up the logic for, you know, if this part ends in these, then we need to tweak it to change it to this, or like if there's any of those kind of rules, I'm not sure what those would be called, but I feel like there has to be a concept for that, because you could end up like combining and things would sound weird in theory, right? So I think that's a thing. And then it will validate the word. If the word is invalid, it will log that out, and basically then we can look at it and say, oh, you know, we need to add another thing to adjust the words when we combine them together to make them still be valid in the language as words. Or we can decide that we're just going to keep it anyway and it will be an exception, because why not? So we have that, which is for compounding nouns. And then I also built a possession statement. I don't know if we'll need a method when doing this, but essentially possession is going to be, you have possessee, possession indicator, possessor. I think that was the order that we thought made sense with doing head initial. So it's sort of like the literal, not the literal translation, but like the translation, if you were to sort of translate it to English, would be the possessee of possessor, whereas of is going to be like a special word. We haven't decided what that is yet, but there will be a word there. Let's see. And then we have all the naming stuff. But I mostly didn't build anything custom yet. It's just like build a random word, build a random suffix for random suffixes. And we'll have to actually flesh that out and decide exactly what we're going to, you know, define and what they'll look like, which we're going to be getting into pretty quickly today, which I'm excited about. But I think we can start with compounding, because we may end up wanting to pull some of that in for creating people's names. I don't want to do that too much, like where you have like definitions or like what the names meet in the language. Like we can all assume that would actually have been what happened, but I don't think we're going to need to actually do that for real. So we'll see if it ends up coming up, it comes up, but otherwise we are just going to do compounding. And so I made an object, and don't worry about this too much. You basically have a root or a morpheme or a word or whatever it is. I called it a root here, but this is just like the actual thing that you're compounding with other things. And then the word class, and this is, oh, is it not going to tell me what those are from here? Right now I just have adjective, verbal adjective, and noun. Verbal adjective being verbs turned into adjectives. And so you can say, okay, this will be, you know, say the word for green, the type is going to be adjective. And then the plurality cases are essentially just, is this singular? Is this a two? Right now I'm playing around with having duo, because I don't know, I think it's fun and it makes sense in a culture that has a strong like concept of the duology between nature and society. So I think that being an integral, like the two sides thing would be relevant from a cultural perspective. And then multiple And I just have NA here where plurality doesn't make sense for that noun. And then it has a comparator that will basically use that head initial ordering. Is this in Python? This is Java, actually. I write code in Java. That's what I actually do. It is not Python. It is a little bit more, I don't know. It's not quite Python. I think if you know Python, this is like, you can probably mostly understand it, but it's a lot more object oriented than Python is. Not to say, I don't know. I'm not super into Python. I have very little experience with it, so. But I know a few people that write it, and they have an okay job making sense of Java, so maybe. But yes, so we have a comparator, which I may have switched the logic on, and we may have to go back and fix, but I think this is going to give us head initial ordering, whereas it'll basically order it by verbal, adjective, adjective, noun, so that we get that ordering when we're compounding, because I think that would all follow that same logic. So where was I? Yes. So compounding utils, right? It will sort and decline before combining. I know nothing about programming. Hopefully you don't actually need to know anything about programming to follow this. I'm trying to talk through what the concepts or the logic of what the code is doing so that you can understand. I think that a normal person whose brain works normally could probably just do this all on paper or in Excel and different spreadsheets and stuff like that. So this is the way that seemed to make the most sense for my brain, and then I can have it randomly generate stuff, and eventually I can have it like translate stuff, but we'll see how that goes. Let's see, adjectives are generally dependents of nouns, so you want to put them after the noun. Oh, good to know. Okay, so let's see. Where were we? Comparts, compared to. So you'd want to put them after the noun in a head initial phrase. So it would go adjectives after the noun. So would verbal adjectives still go after the noun? So it would be noun, verbal adjective, adjective, or like verbal adjective, noun, adjective? One of those? I assume verbal adjective would come after the noun, maybe? Pending confirmation, I will start doing that. So basically just reverse it. And our negatives would be positive, and our positives would be negative. I find comparators kind of confusing in general, because it's basically just is this like greater than or less than in terms of like numbers? Like, is this, if you were to convert it into an integer, greater than or less than? Okay. I think it depends what the verbal adjective actually is. If it's describing the way the entire phrase relates to an action, it might end up being the head of the entire phrase. So I would expect this to be like if you were saying like fast river, right, as like a name of something, because this is just used for building those compounds, like the ordering when building compound words. So it would be for the noun. So like fast river, or I mean, it's fast isn't even, well, okay, what's a verbal adjective? My brain is totally functioning today, I promise. Running river? Is that a verbal adjective? Running river, singing brook, that sort of thing, maybe? I'm not sure. Yeah, I would think that, because isn't there two forms of verbal adjectives? There's like the ones that end in ing and the ones that end in like ed or like en to imply like something that actively happens or generally happens, and then things that like have happened with that, I think. It's entirely dependent, probably actually, of the noun plus adjective phrase as a whole. It's entirely a dependent of the entire phrase. So we would put them at the very end then? Is that correct? We'd put them at the very end? I think that's what that means. So in that case, an adjective. Okay, we're comparing to an adjective. The other compounding part, verbal adjective, would be less than the adjective. The adjective is equal to themselves. The noun is greater. For verbal adjective, compared to a verbal adjective is the same. That's still on the end, so it's still greater. Oh, okay, that's actually, then I just wrote this wrong compared to the code I wrote. So I think this is correct, where they are dependents. I'm going to make a note of that for myself. Fast red river will be ordered like river red fast here. Noun phrases tend to be head final. Okay, yes. Okay, so let me write that down so I don't forget, because that's half the reason I do all of this, because I'm incapable of remembering anything. Once I stop thinking about it, unless I write it down, it's gone forever. So adjective of the noun. I can spell. Okay, so I think that's right. It's still possible that I mixed up my negatives and my pluses depending on which way it does the comparing. Those are the things I always switch up, like those binary things. You think that would be the easiest part, but just gonna delete that. Yeah, so it does the comparing, which sorts it, so it should put all the parts in order. And I know that we have more rules about like within adjectives, like I've seen those things that are like, if you list all these different types of adjectives, like one with like size and color and all these other things, like there's a very specific order that sounds correct to us. I'm not going to go that in depth here just because, if it's all the same type, it'll put it in the same order. So I'm just going to say those are going to be the same. I don't expect to have multiple of those in a name. Like if I was saying like the, what would be, okay, the clean blue river. Like I feel like that's a bit like, I wouldn't do that as much, and then I can just, do it in whatever order I think. It'll be fine. That can be up to whatever, I think. I don't know if there has to be a strong rule there, but it'll sort, and then it will apply any sort of declensions depending on what type of plurality it has, if there is a plurality, or if that is not applicable. Because I think that makes sense for the order to do it, maybe, anyway. Yeah, so, and then we'll have to do any sort of adjustments later on. So we'll get there. So let's go to the builder. So what did I say actually that we needed to start with? Determine plurality, declension system, and affixes. Yes, so I think that's where we want to start with applying the plurality affixes, which is going to be the first actual things like morpheme sounds, whatever, that we're actually going to put into this language, which is exciting. And I think, did I put... No, I just started marking out what I think we would need. Where did I actually put that? Oh, declension utils. This would be it. Okay, so when it gets the plurality declension, essentially it's going to see, okay, what is the plurality case, and then it will apply the declension to it, whatever it is. And so when I see people doing these normally in like conlangers that actually know how to conlang and know what they're doing, they make like a cute little table that just shows like what the different things that you would apply to them are, and if there's any differences based off like what the ending is, right? So I think we said we were going to do suffixes here. Did we say? We didn't even say if we were going to do suffixes specifically. I think it makes sense to do a suffix because a lot of the other things we're doing are suffixes, because honorifics and diminutives will be suffixes. So no, actually, maybe this should be a prefix. I think actually maybe we do a prefix here. I think that could be fun. So prefix, And then, so it would depend on what the word starts with. So let's see if I can do this. If we have, I'm going to say single is just like default. So like the nouns are just like single nouns. And then you would have the duo case. Hello, Seb, welcome. Plurality case. See if I can figure out how to do this without, oh no, it's not going to let me do this because this is an actual Java file. So what we're going to do, duo, and then multiple, or we'll just say multi. And I would assume that the prefixes for these would probably derive from morphemes from these concepts, like two. They could probably derive from like two and many, maybe, or two or whatever that would be in the language. So, and I'm assuming we'll have multiple versions of it depending on what the start of the word is, because it's a prefix, or potentially it would change what the start of the word is. So let's go to our library, our morphemes, and we are going to want a concept of two or a duo, and a concept of like many. I think we'll just have one there, and then that'll just be a morpheme. And then we would have the prefix versions that would be like duo of, many of, or like two of kind of concept. I think that's how that works. I think, maybe, potentially. So we just want a morpheme. We just want to randomly build some morphemes. So let's start with, if I can find what I'm looking for. Here we go. Is island, lang, main. Okay, so we just want to like generate some random morphemes, which I'm going to say is just going to be like a regular, like a single syllable. I think it makes sense to keep those short. So build syllable. And because this is going to be used for prefix, build. Here we go. Build word with syllables length 1. That's the right way to do that. Okay. So it will build 50 syllables with, I guess, both counting as like starting and ending syllables. So it'll be like the actual words for those. Let's go up to the top. So these are a bunch of examples that it generated. So we can see if there's any that we like. I think in case it ends up being, since it's a prefix, or since I'll be using it as a prefix, it might make sense for it to end in a consonant, so have a coda? Yeah, actually have a coda cluster that could be stripped off potentially in using it as a prefix. So, and we could always add something onto these, but these wouldn't be used that often. I kind of like this one, hens. That's kind of interesting. Let's just like some options. That's too long. I like the idea of having something like short here. So if it's hens, is there something that sort of has that? Maybe toss. Is interesting. Let's run it again. Did I do that right? Run. This would cost cod. Zild. Actually, I kind of like Zild. I think that's kind of fun. So do like Jaws, but then it sounds kind of like Jaws Lesh, which is our other language, like it has the vibes there. So let's go with one of these. And we can always change these. Like the idea with this is that I can always tweak any of these at any point and it can regenerate things. So Zild, Toss, and Hens. I think I like Zild and Toss better. So let's go with those two. Let's say that Zild and Toss. Let's say Zild is going to be our word for a duo, and Toss will be our word for many. It's exciting. So then we would have the prefix versions of those, right? So these would be a prefix. And those would end up actually meaning, if you were translating it, a duo of or many of, since they would be at the beginning. So that might actually be a little bit, I don't know. Let's just copy this over into the builders for declining plurality. I'll learn these word forms. It took me like 20 minutes earlier when I was writing up this code, trying to figure out what like the word would be for if you're creating like a declension, like coming to declined. Took me a lot of Googling. I don't know why, but I struggled with that, which is fun. So if we're applying the duo, that's Zild. So then I guess the options would be if it then starts with a consonant cluster or a vowel cluster would be the question. So if the word dot starts with, and then we'll go with, let's see, I have this somewhere, this logic that I can steal from real quick. A new Conlanger's greatest enemy, learning all the terms. Yeah. Honestly, that's a big struggle. And I was always really, really bad at like English grammar. Like I can normally, like I read a lot growing up, so I could just kind of like intuitively understand what the correct grammar should be. But actually like the words for anything, like if you ask me to explain what like an adverb is, I'd just be like, oh, I don't know. Like I had to Google a lot of terms this morning. That is going to be a struggle for me, but at least I'm very much learning here. Okay, where do I have starts with? I have this logic somewhere, I apologize. I want to know. I must have a validator for like, Why can I not remember what this is? Is it a validation filter? Ah, there we go. Okay. Is a vowel or is a consonant based off the language rules. We don't want to be that fancy. We'll just do something like this. So if the word, do we have the language rules in this class? Word class, plurality case? No, we do not. I don't really want to pass that in here, so maybe we can do this without the language rules. So oh gosh, now I'm lost in my own code. I apologize. Let's see. This is my test class. List of yeah, no, everywhere I need the language rules in order to do it. All right, well, maybe we just need to pass that down into here then. So we will need the validation filters. which will be needed down here. Which I guess it's not that surprising that we need those anyway. So then validation filters. Okay, so then here we should definitely have nothing. We have nothing. This dot. Okay, no, we do. Let's see, get language rules dot get. This is the fun part of coding. Word builder. Get translator, maybe? Oh, I'm dumb. I'm dumb. No, you did not miss the stream. We are here. Everyone's just standing here. Well, I guess maybe you're sitting down while I confuse myself. This actually just needs the language rules, and it passes that in because this is a static method. Doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. So we can get the language rules here. And then language rules, pass that down here. And here. Okay, so then now we should be able to create validation filters. We'll just do validation filters dot is vowel language rules. I keep being. Oh, do I have that turned on? Can you hear my Discord notifications? All right, hold up. Let me. Do not disturb. There we go. Probably should have thought to do that earlier. Apologies. Thank you for letting me know. Yeah, so if it is a vowel, word dot get. Oh gosh. Getting index, ending index, 0, 1, maybe. That might be correct. Again, I can never remember my ordering there. But so this should essentially say, is that first character a vowel? It should just take a letter. Yeah, so that should be correct. So if it starts with a vowel, essentially, we would potentially apply that duality declension one way. And if it is a consonant, which if it's not a vowel, it would be a consonant, then we would do it another way. Yeah. Okay, so an example of this would be if the word is like, I don't know, ooh, oof. That's totally a word. So if our duo morpheme is zild, then zildoof makes sense, right? It could just apply it as is. I think that would be fine. So we would literally just be returning zild plus whatever the word is, right? But if it is a consonant, then potentially zild something or other might sound weird. And then that would get us into doing the validation of whether or not it's valid. So we could say if, let's see, make sure it's a valid word. Get word builder. We don't have the word builder here, but essentially later, and I can go in and do this on my own time, but I could check if it's valid as is, or potentially just adding like zil maybe. But then otherwise we will just return zi plus the word. I think that should work, maybe. And then we would essentially do the same thing for if it's a multiple declension. So going down here, don't actually need that anymore. This is tas. So we'll say this would be ta. We'll just go with that for now. And I will make the actual morphemes for it at some point. But those would be our options, basically, that we'd have there. And I think that makes sense for doing that. So then that should be that first step done, where we're doing the duo declensions, or the plurality declensions in general. And I imagine as we go through and actually generate some of these, once we actually have a list of nouns, we'll find some ones that seem weird, and then I'll have to add a bunch of exceptions in here that will change it essentially and adjust to make it make more sense. So plurality. What was next? Plan. Build compounding rules / adjustments. Okay, so this is essentially this part to make adjustments. So my thought here is let's just like generate a bunch of random words and then combine them and see what it looks like. So let's go to our main class. And what I want to do is say random words, and it's not going to matter for word order here because we're not going to have a sense of the word order based off, you know, like we won't know what type it is. So I vote we just like do something random for that, just to get those initial rules going and see what we need and what would make sense to do. So if we want random words, and they can be any number of syllables. So let's do we'll pretend these are nouns, but they won't necessarily be nouns. Build a random word. And then what we'll do is let's just build 2 of them. And then we will print that we are combining. You wouldn't say compounding, like that would be weird, right? Combining noun 1 plus noun 2 and then we want the language builder dot build compound noun list of new compound part, which this would take noun 1. It would take whatever the type is. So we're just going to say this is noun. And then it would take the plurality, which for now we'll just say NA for both of these, just to keep it simple. And so this would be noun 2. And then maybe that'll be interesting. And maybe it won't be. I'm not sure. This is definitely getting into territory where, like, I feel like once you have a lot more developed systems of validation and which, like, what things would, I guess, be valid in different parts of the word, because we've done very little bit of that. We've done very little with, like, which things are more likely to be seen or not. Like, I feel like this would make more sense, but okay, so let's start at the top. So Gikshu and Chicky, Chick. Jiksu, I feel like that's fine. I don't think it's less pronounceable than it was before. That's fine. I think like any of the ones that are where one is a consonant cluster and one's a vowel, like those are going to combine together really well. I don't think there'll be a problem there. So let's just scroll down to, okay, so here's one that's consonant consonant. So Narx plus Lonu? Lonu? Narx, Lonu. I mean, that's fine. Rizlo, that's fine. Dread her kid, that's fine. These might all be fine. Jadre Ulsely. Okay, so once we get to the vowel, I think that gets a little weird. So maybe if something ends in a vowel and starts in a vowel, the ones that we're combining, maybe we chop the vowel cluster off of part of it. I don't know if that's a thing, but that seems like it would give you a more consistent feel there, although we have very few of that. But let's say we want to do that just for now. We can always go back and take that out. So combine two parts. So let's copy what we did down here. What does this have? Language rules. Okay, so we do already have the language rules for that, so it's no big struggle to get those down here. Yeah, that's fine. Okay. Okay, so for certain vowels, you could have a rule where the vowel becomes a certain consonant. Oh, like U or I becoming V or Y at the merger. So my only worry with that, okay, let me think through. Maybe I'm thinking about this wrong. So if you are combining two words, if it ends in a vowel, say, and the other one starts with a vowel, then it could be like, say it's a single syllable, right? And you have like some consonant cluster, some vowel cluster, plus vowel cluster, consonant cluster. If you change the vowel to a specific consonant, then if there's other vowels, like say if it's a two vowel cluster and you just change one of the vowels, then that would be fine. But then, or would you, I guess, add an extra consonant in the middle? Or because if you just add a consonant, you have no idea if the ordering of the consonants would be valid, because basically you'd just be adding another consonant onto the consonant cluster, right? I feel like that seems complicated from a validation standpoint, but I could be wrong. Or unless you're picking a vowel that's always valid at the end of a consonant cluster. That could be interesting. One of my conlangs has inserted consonant between vowels of conjoined compounds like that. Okay, yeah, so that's an option. I can't talk today. Or merge a double vowel into a single if they are the same one. Yeah, I think those are all options. I think that definitely makes sense to do. So we could combine double vowels into one. We could add like a buffer consonant, or we could add a consonant to the like switch one of the vowels whispers to a consonant. Okay, so let me look real quick because I just need to visualize this for a minute. So if we go up to the phonemes, so plosive, affricate, fricative, nasal, approximate vowel. So it was an approximate, hint? Thought it was approximate, whatever. So if it was one of these, those would always make sense on the end, unless, let's see, what was our example? Where's my, I'm not gonna bother doing it. So yeah, so if we added like a VH or an R, that would most likely be fine in terms of order, because all of these can mostly follow whatever, other than obviously the list of things that they can't follow. I feel like that would be interesting, but I think I'm going to go with something more simpler for this part, and then we can always add a couple of exceptions later. Like if you end up getting some stuff that looks weird, we could add a couple cases where it does something like that just to make it weird. I like the idea of just if it's the two of the same vowels, just merging them into one, or in some cases that could be fine. Although that would really only help if it's like a single vowel on both sides, like a single vowel cluster, or if one is one and okay, so hear me out. Logic being, and I'm just going to write this in English logic and I can code it up later. So if we have, I guess, part one coda being a vowel, I guess it wouldn't be a coda, but part one nucleus and part one nucleus merging, right? If they are both vowels, like they're single vowels, then it could just be a single vowel. If they are the same vowel, then we'll dedupe it, right? So it can just be one. And then if one of those has two vowels, but what would you call it? Like the actual letters that are merging are the same. If one vowel is the same, remove it. And then if both are 2 or greater, then we'll do something else. Maybe we'll add a consonant. Maybe we'll just delete one of them. I like the idea of just, what would be a good one? We'll just add a buffer consonant. Or maybe we could have a couple options depending on what the vowels are. But I think this would make sense because then essentially what we'd have is if we're combining like 2 plus ot, right? Or 2 plus ut. That's kind of dumb, but what we'd get is tut. If we had t eu plus ut, we'd have t eut. And if we had TEU plus EIT, we'd have whatever our buffer consonant is. I don't know what type of consonant it would make sense to use. It kind of might make sense to have like a plosive in there maybe, or a stop. So we could maybe go with T, D, K, or G. Maybe an N or a T. I'm thinking. No, D. We're going to do a D. I don't know why, but we'll do a D. We can always change it later. That is true. We could do a glottal stop. That's an option. Okay, I'm going to say either D or glottal stop. And we can do some like generation with that later just to see what ends up making the most sense. Because I don't think there's a lot of cases where we're going to have a lot of vowels. And I think we even said in this language, if I can remember, length weights. So for the nucleus, there's a 70% chance of only having one vowel in the nucleus and a 30% chance of having two. So you will never have more than 2 vowels in the nucleus, which also makes sense for why we do this system that we've been talking about, right? Where we're not allowing a lot of them together, because it would actually, if that sort of becomes a new nucleus without putting something in there, it would then be weird for the language. I think that sounds possibly legit. So yeah, I think a glottal stop might be weird there. I do want to use a glottal stop though. Let's go back here. we'll play with that because I want to like generate a bunch and see how it looks. So we would do TEUDUIT. Do it, maybe. Are you allowing all possible combos of vowels for words with a double vowel? So right now, we are allowing everything that I've determined English E to be allowed. So, see in my rules, I don't have anything that I've specifically said you can't have, which I do have a system in here where I can say, oh, this vowel cluster, we just can't have it. However, in my validation filters, let's see, I think I have, yeah, I have a list of denied vowel clusters, which these are all 3 vowel clusters actually. So I don't have anything that at the high level is just like always going to not be allowed in any language I create, which I may at some point want to add some 2 vowel clusters that would be limited, but I don't currently have that, which I would add middle onset letter weights. Yeah, I'd add basically vowel nucleus. No, what did I call it? I don't remember what I called it, but I have a way where I could add that at some point if there are certain combos of vowels that I don't want to be combined together, which I think would actually probably make sense to do if I'm only allowing a very rare chance of the double vowels. It might make sense for a language to have less of them too, like the less options when they're combined. So actually, I like the idea of doing that. I think that would make sense to do, and it would mean less vowel sounds overall, which would make the language more distinct, which for making a naming language would probably make a lot of sense to make it sound more consistent and more cohesive without having as many like you're not going to be looking at a lot of examples of this when you're like reading the book or whatever. So let's go to my base for language rules and see what I called this method. Are there any specific clusters that should be more or less common when generating? Let's see, get allowed vowels, get supported. Perform vowel cluster lang validation. Let's do this. So basically what this method does is when it goes through and uses all of the different like letters allowed in the language, it'll go through and validate every individual cluster. And if one of those clusters is in here, it wouldn't be allowed. And then we could potentially use that list to, well, no, because we wouldn't be merging them later anyway. So that wouldn't be relevant. Yeah. So we could be doing that. And then recently began following your rope building guide. Oh, thank you so much. I'm glad you like it. It's definitely like, I think it works well for certain people that have a similar mind to me where they're like, I need cheat sheets for everything. And yeah, I think it helps. Thank you. So let's actually do this and add that to our language rules down here. So this would be override, and probably should have actually copied the rest of this. Where was this? Here we go. Okay, so perform vowel cluster lang validation. So what we basically be saying, if are denied, or do we want to do allowed? Double. Let's do allowed vowel clusters. I feel like they'll be that have more, probably more allowed than denied, or more denied than allowed. So it makes sense to define it from this perspective. So we'll just do that. So it will be a list, and then if return initial clusters dot stream, we'll filter all the initial clusters to make sure that the cluster is in You want to make this look nicer. Go for it. Okay. Thank you for coming. Hopefully it is productive. I think we're already making progress, but have a good rest of your Sunday. Okay. So, allowed vowels, and then do I have a list somewhere of, those are all the vowel teams that they have that are 2, which I don't know if this is every possible one my system will actually allow, but I can go through at some point and do that, which I guess we'll have to do it before we start generating too many, like, actual morphemes, because the ones I have so far are just, no, we don't have any here. These are all just placeholders. These are the like weird practice ones I was generating just to like try things out. And what are the ones I had in here? This was AI, let's see, AU, IO, II, and that was it. So let's go back to here. Sorry, my computer here has different like shortcuts than the one I work with though, so I keep doing random things. Okay, so I have a lot of, let's see, I have this one, where's AU? I'm trying to see if there's any patterns here of what I do have. Diphthong vowel teams. For my taste, fewer options is not only easier to work with, but sounds more naturalistic. Yeah, that's what I'm sort of thinking. Like, I do want to limit this down a lot, especially because, like, in a normal language that people are actually going to be speaking, right? Like, things being more common would really give you a feel for, like, the sound of the language, but with so few, like, examples of it in the story, like, it's going to be people's names, some place names, and that's basically going to be it, right? So I think I need to make it, like, really, really have that sort of, like, feel by making certain things really common, limiting it a lot, just so it can kind of have that feel of a specific identity. What is a programming language the software I use right now? This is just Java. That's it. It's just generic Java. And I am programming right now in IntelliJ, which is an IDE. Nothing fancy. I don't know. Java probably wouldn't actually be the ideal language for this, but it is the one I know, and thus it is the only correct one. Yeah, so if we limit this to, I could have a bunch of diphthongs. Hey, you. Oh, hi. I'm not sure. So I know with choosing your, okay, this is a question for people, if anyone knows. I know when choosing which sounds you have in the language, there's that idea of sound symmetry, which we talked about up here, right? Where we didn't want to have like isolated sounds, right? Because if you're used to having a lot of sounds in like one part of the mouth, you're less likely to have like just a single sound in another part of the mouth, right? So like that sort of concept where you're having multiple things in each like row and column for the most part. I don't know if there's something like that for vowel sounds. The problem here also is that we're not doing these actually phonetically. We are just saying, you know, these are the, oh my gosh, I'm already lost. Here we go. We're just doing these from the context of like, I will put these two letters together, and however your generic English speaker would pronounce that is what they are, right? Which would mean that every actual letter set or vowel cluster would probably be pronounced a lot of different ways, because based off context, I feel like we pronounce different vowels and vowel clusters a lot of different ways anyway. So like there's going to be a lot of variety there. So I don't know if there's a way to get any sort of vowel symmetry in terms of which vowel sounds are allowed. I don't know if anyone has any idea if there's a general process for that. Otherwise, I can just pick some stuff that looks similar-ish, sound similar-ish, and just go with it. Because yeah, I don't really know. But I feel like we'll definitely want EA. I feel like that's a pretty standard one. EIGH. I mean, that's not technically, these are like more sounds, but it wouldn't be generated like that in my language. That would just basically be EI. And I treat Y, I don't think I treat Y as a vowel in this. Do I? Is Y a vowel? No, Y is not a vowel. And I also don't have Y. So I don't need to worry about that. No Ys. So this is out, this is out, this is out. So we have EA, AI, and then of the E teams, have EA, EI. I think EI is a little bit easier than IE. Maybe I won't have anything that has an E at the end. Maybe we'll say there's no double E. We have, okay, OA and OE. Do I want those? I have IO. Maybe IEAO. Let's see. Vowels do not have the same type of resonance that consonants have in language. Vowels instead tend to favor distinguishability, with 5 vowel systems being the most common. Right. Yeah. So like I have those same letters, but I'm not doing like sounds, right? So like they are essentially how people would read them in English because that's what I write in. So I guess maybe there isn't anything specific that it would be helpful to do here other than just picking a few that make sense. Let's see. I-O, O-O. I think maybe I'm going to avoid having the double vowel. I just think maybe that's other than double I's. Maybe we can just have double I's and no other double vowels. Do I want OU? Maybe OU is fine. And then maybe this is a perfectly fine set of allowed ones. English has a very large number of vowel sounds. Its 5 vowel characters just also represent the 5 most common vowels on IPA. Yeah. Yeah, and that's basically what we have here for the most part. Just because I can't control how people read things. I know you can have like pronunciation guides, but like those wouldn't work for me just with how my brain works. I'm way too ADHD for that. I'd forget how to pronounce it after 2 seconds, which is also why people have to constantly like remind me in videos and comment and be like, hey, that's not actually pronounced like that. It's pronounced like this. And I'm like, no. It's a lot of effort to try and remember them, but yes. Java is a nice tool for work. Text processing isn't that different from one programming language to another, though community libraries / packages might be game changers in this case. Yeah, like with the way I'm using it anyway, which is again, like I'm a person who writes Java. I know how Java works. Like I know how like the object-oriented language part of it and what like libraries and stuff it has works. So, like I've sort of designed this whole thing around what Java can do. So I haven't really thought about it too much, but there are probably like some other good ways that you could design all this based around what other languages have, I would think. I can pronounce that. Okay. Kithusave? Kithusave? Kithusave. I can't pronounce anything. Has basically 9 vowel sounds. Do you allow all the clusters of vowels, or do you just allow a few of them? That's my question. Double vowels do exist in language too. They are when 2 vowels are pronounced in one syllable. Yeah. Yeah. So we are going to say this is just our list and it has to be in this list or it's not valid. And we'll automatically see this coming out when we're generating. That one doesn't have clusters. Okay, that probably makes things easier. But we will allow these because I think it helps. Okay, and then we won't have to do anything with this. The base language generation stuff deals with all this automatically. Okay, yeah, so now we have that. So now we don't have to worry as much about, there we go, yes. So we'll add that there. Yeah, and so this case will be really rare, and this might not even be valid. I'd have to go back and look. I don't think we allowed UI, but it's fine for this example here. The Yeah, so actively breaking vowels apart when words combine with extra consonants. Yeah, which I feel like partially, like I'm allowing some of them, but I feel like partially that makes sense to do here just to kind of keep it limited. The major flaw with English is we only have 5-ish vowel letters, but over a dozen vowel sounds. Yeah. I've tried to vaguely comprehend the vowel sounds. Like I can get the IPA consonant chart, like where those are. Like I can sort of look at that and make sense of the sounds for the standard ones, but the vowel stuff just blows my mind. Like I'm just one day maybe it'll make sense, but maybe part of that is just how many things English has, and I read a lot. Like that's most of my understanding of English is from just reading it, and I don't know. I don't think it's doing me any favors here, honestly, but we'll see. So yeah, so I need to come up with that logic. Once I made a crazy conlang with no vowel. Why would you do that to yourself? That sounds crazy. I mean, did you have a lot of like very short syllables, or what's that word? Where the language defines which syllable sounds can sort of be in what order? The thing that I have here, where it's plosive, then affricate, then fricative, then nasal, then approximate, the vowel. That like ordering, I can't remember what that is called, but did you have to do something really weird for that? 5 base vowels, 6 diphthongs, and allows large clusters to form. Yeah, I feel like that's, yeah, definitely has a lot more options in there. 6 diphthongs. I love diphthongs. Like, I don't fully comprehend them, but I think they're amazing, mostly because the word diphthong is fantastic. Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot of vowel sounds, and I recognize a few of those letters. The rest, I just have no idea. It blows my mind, honestly. It just blows my mind. Okay, so for combining two parts, if we're actually doing the combination of things, I'm trying to decide if I should actually code this now or code this after the fact, like if this will come up in doing things. But I think this is really our only problem right now in terms of this. Like all the other like consonant clusters, or like consonant clusters to vowel clusters, like all of that merging looked fine to me. So basically what we want to do is I'm going to do this off camera because it's going to take me a hot minute to do it, and I don't want you all to just have to sit here while I do that. But basically I'll figure out some logic where I just grab like the closest characters and the second closest characters and then just check if they're vowels or consonants, and then based off that logic I'll do a thing here. Like it won't be that crazy, but I will do that. And if I end up having to do it, I can always come back and do it real quick. I was intending wind and leaf sound. I mean, that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. And if you have like it set up to where there's like that rules for how it's pronounced, and that it like there's ordering to it so that people can like move through the sounds of their mouth, like I feel like that's cool. I wouldn't be abysmal at it, but I'm abysmal at pronouncing literally everything, even English, so can't really judge there. The cluster of I and Y looking characters all sound similar. The O and U characters mostly sound similar. The E and A characters mostly sound similar, if that helps. Well, let's go back and double check with here. I already got rid of this. Okay, so yes, we have a lot of A's. Yeah, I mean, I think we're kind of a little bit all over the board here, but we don't have the Y, so I feel like that helps. I feel like this will be fine. I feel like this will make sense. Okay, so other than having to do compounding, yeah, I'll need to do that one bit, but I think otherwise that will work for building compounding words. And then what we're just going to have to do is I'll have to build up the actual libraries and put them together. But like, I don't think I have to actually do that much there from a grammatical perspective. What is happening? What does combined parts need? Oh, this also needs the language rules. Okay, there we go. Yeah, like I think that is fine for building compound words. Like obviously I have to actually start building up the lexicon, but in terms of that logic there, I feel like that's sufficient. So I think we can move on to, oh, we need to build a plurality indicator. Let's do that first. So this is essentially going to be a separate word piece. Wait, word order for the roots of compound words. So we are doing, hold on, let me go to that. Our compounding words follow, let's see, this compare to method. I think you showed up after we were working on that, but we're doing head initial ordering, so it is noun, then adjective, then verbal adjective. So all of that should be handled here, and I'm not doing anything fancy if they're the same type. It'll just be probably whichever order I type them in. So that'll probably have some default ordering there just because it'll be the way I naturally type it. But that'll impose that ordering before it merges them together. I think your vowels for your Conlang are usable. Yeah, extremely prone to change. Yeah, exactly. Like, I'll need to go through and like check my lexicon if I decide to like rule anything out or change that, but it really wouldn't be that big of a deal. So good, good. Okay, so let's make our plurality indicator. And again, this is going to be its own word. I want it to be really short. I want it to be really simple, right? Because it's just like this, something, this. I don't want it to feel like it's another word. I want it to feel like one of those little mini things. So I'm thinking it'll be a single vowel or a vowel cluster, I think would make the most sense. So this is, oh, sorry, possession indicator. I'm sorry, I've been saying plurality indicator because it's a P word and my brain just can't. Possession indicator. So I think, yes, I think this should just be a single vowel. I lean towards A just because I feel like it's a really simple vowel to be by itself. Like an E by itself is a little bit more confusing. Like, I don't know if in English we have a single E anywhere, so I think people would be like, not really know how to pronounce it. We have I, we have E, noun plus noun has two meanings depending on which word is which. Ice cream versus cream ice. Yeah, I mean, that's true. You are correct. I'm hoping, perhaps very naively, that it won't come up much with how I'm using it. Like, I suppose actually no, I will be using that a lot. It will just have to be based off the ordering of how I'm typing it, because I will have things like river mountain maybe would be that case where they're both like noun, and mountain river versus river mountain would definitely be very different even in this use case, but I would type it something mountain, which then I think with the ordering, because it's just using a general list, I think it would stay in that order. I'll have to check. I'm going to make myself a note for that, but where would that be? Because my plan with this was to keep this ordering English-like. So I think whatever order I type it in for what I want the meaning to, having that be consistent would potentially make sense. I hope. I'm hoping that works out, because otherwise I don't really know, like, classifying is the wrong word, but like having more noun types than noun is a little beyond my grasp at the moment. But if I had, like, I could do that if I had to and have it have a type system, or just, I don't know, make sure it's, although it could be argued that one of the nouns is playing the role of adjective or verb in those cases. Yeah, that's true. I'll have to play around with the generator and see if it's consistent, and just make sure that it sort of makes sense with the ordering. Like if I just do it a few times and then like write out what it would mean in English, and then just make sure that that ordering still kind of makes sense. Just to make sure I can be consistent with this, because this will also imply a certain level of like the person using it understanding how to do it, you know? So hopefully I can get that worked out, but yeah, so we were going to pick a possession sound. Possession sound. Nods head. Yes, good. Okay. So I have all of these. I think O, I think U, and I think E would be confusing by itself, like just entirely by itself in terms of pronunciation. So I think that leaves us with either A and I. I think I'm gonna go with A, just because I feel like that will look the less, I don't know, like I think that kind of like, I don't know. That's what I'm doing. That's what I'm doing. I don't know why. I'm just doing it. A. So now that can't be used by anything else. That is our possession indicator. And when we build possession things, possession statements, I don't know what that is actually called, but possessee of, which would be A, I guess, or not that that's actually what that is, but like this person's this, or the blank of this person is sort of what that ordering is. And then it'll have A in the middle. Done. Okay. Will the possession part, oh, you're using like grammatical words. Okay, hold on. Will the possession particle sound be solely dedicated to that person purpose? In which case, maybe you want something bigger than just a single vowel. That is a valid point. The thing here though is I'm not writing any actual sentences in this language ever, right? I'm only really creating nouns and compound nouns. I think you just answered it. Yeah. So it'll only ever just be that. That should be good. Yes. So I don't need to worry about a lot of different parts of speech that don't end up in compounding here. So I think we're done with compounding for now. And wow, that's why I got confused because I wrote it wrong here. Possession indicator. Okay, so now we are going to move on to names, which I think is the most exciting part, just because people will actually understand this. Like, no one reading a book with the names and the place names in this language is going to pick up on how the place names mean literally anything. Like, they're not going to connect the dots at like, oh, you know, those two words have some similar sounds into them. Maybe it just so happens to correlate to the fact that they're both near rivers, which, why would my readers know that, right? Like, as much as I want to do it just so that I can create some interesting sounding place names that have that consistency, and if you were to look at a map and like really try, you can maybe figure some of it out. The names are the things that people are going to pick up on in terms of the meaning, right? So I am the most excited about those. So we need to build our suffixes. We will know. Yes, that is true. You will all know. And if you ever read my book that ever actually gets published, you'll be like, ah, yes, I know exactly what this place name means. And maybe there'll be like secret Easter eggs in there if you actually understand the language, you know? Could be a thing. Could be a thing. Okay. So where was I? Language builder. Names. Okay, so what we talked about last time for names is that I'm just going to have we'll be so proud. Yeah, I mean, honestly, it would be pretty funny. It would be pretty funny if people actually picked up on that kind of stuff. I would probably like, I don't know, I'd kind of freak out. The humble footnote has the power to give readers many a lore. That is true. That is true. I could always add footnotes. Okay, yes, so names. Names, we're keeping pretty simple. I'm not having middle names. It's just going to be a personal name and a family name, but we are going to add on honorific and diminutive suffixes to the personal names. The honorific is going to indicate class level and will be used in like more formal settings, so you wouldn't have an honorific and a diminutive used at the same time. Which is good because then we don't have to worry about like merging the suffixes, unless you were to like chain diminutives, but I'm gonna say no right now, unless we come to the point where we're like, no, we definitely need that. But yes, so the questions that I need to answer for this are for the personal names, if there's going to be any sort of like patterns for this. I know a lot of like languages will have like gendered endings or gendered things in it where like you can sort of tell if something is like a male or a female name, or they might have like then neutral names and you have like Like, I could have something like that, but given that I don't have, well, I mean, does English have that, or do we just, like, have certain expectations on certain names normally being male versus female names? Because I know they change a lot, and I know there's a lot of neutral names that can be used for both. And like some names that we now consider male names used to be female names and vice versa. So maybe English doesn't even really have that. But maybe you see that more often in languages with like that actually have like Spanish, where you can have like gendered nouns, I guess, or like just gendered words in general that change how they end and change how they grammar words, I don't know, decline, apply cases. There's a word there, pretend I said the correct one, largely borrowed from root languages. Okay, yeah, that would make sense. That would make sense. So I think in this case, I am sure that I, as a human being, will have some biases in terms of like when I'm generating names and I'm like trying to find a name to match a character. Like, I am sure that I am going to have some biases on that where I will lean towards certain names that like sound more like the character. So I'm sure I will have some biases there, but I don't think I need to codify that in the language. So I don't think I'll have anything that's like gendered about names where they have certain endings. But then there could be like, I could decide there's a very consistent rule for whether or not like proper names of people end in a vowel or consonant, which could make my suffixing later on a little bit easier. Like, maybe they are always, I mean, they're always shorter syllables anyway. Did I say anything? Name syllable length weights, 50% chance of single syllable, 50% chance of double syllable, and there is 50% chance of not having a coda in general, and then a 25% chance of having a single consonant letter in the coda and a 25% chance of having two. So, okay, 50-50 chance that it would end in a consonant or vowel, and I could make it something specific if I wanted to for the very end of a name. Do I want to? I don't know if I want to. I feel like if I did, I would make sure it ends in a consonant, just because I feel like that would make the most sense to not have it. I don't know. Maybe we'll just work with both, and if for some reason I end up only liking one set, we can always go back and change that. But so maybe we just don't have any requirements. Maybe anything could be a person's name as long as I think it sounds good as a person's name, and that is the only requirement that we have for right now. We'll go with that. So that's the personal name. So it could end in whatever, and then, oh, that's just a random suffix builder. I probably don't even need that. So then family names, potentially the same way, but I could have a social class indicator in some of the names, which let me show that to you all in case you were not here last time. But the social classes I basically have are, you have like your king, right? Which they'll have their own special like honorific title that will actually be used in the language. Obviously, there would be a lot of other titles, but I'm going to assume those would have been translated into English, so I won't actually come up with those in language. But this will be an actual honorific suffix applied to the king or, queen's name. It's not necessarily like a gendered thing. I don't know. But I have people that are of the elite class, people who are like of the elite class, but only from being sworn into it, not by being born into it. The regular class, which won't have an honorific, that'll just be like the default. And then you will have the rejected class, is what I'm calling it right now. I'm not sure what that word would actually translate to, but these are essentially people that have either they were sworn to or born to one of the elite families and they were essentially kicked out, right? So it's like a very like, that's your bottom of the social hierarchy tier there. So for these, if I have an honorific to indicate social class, which would sort of be, I guess for this would sort of be specifically an honorific, and for this class would be like a D honorific, unhonorific, anti-honorific. I mean, it's still, I guess, technically an honorific, but it would be like a negative thing. And so families that are noble families, I could see them having something in the names or some sort of trend in the names to kind of indicate their lofty, fancy status. I don't know if it would be the same, like come from the same derived roots, right? Because I feel like from morphemes roots. From a root perspective, I feel like these would probably derive from a root meaning like favored, maybe. Like these are the favored families of, you know, my magical entities that choose the Dragon King. That's like getting into cultural lore or society lore. Always used or used from below or different based on relative social rank of speaker versus named person. It would be more of a formality, right? So if it's someone that you don't have a lot of like, I don't know, like if you're not having an informal chat with someone, you would always use the honorifics. I could see people of the rejected class probably wouldn't use that for each other just because it is an insult, but everyone above them would, unless for some reason they're friends with them, would use that. And then within the elite class, yeah, I think it would probably be a formality thing. There's going to be an increasing level of societal emphasis on family bonds. So I could see there being something that ties into like an ageist hierarchy within families as well, where you'd be more likely to use it to someone that would be older than you in your family. But I don't have a super strong sense right now in the society of like age rank. Like obviously it would be like a bit of a thing, especially because the society is moving towards families having more control and it being more like family centric and like kinship bond centric. But it would definitely be used in any formal setting and probably when you're trying to be like polite, like it'd be like a politeness thing probably. But yeah, so I think there'd be like a root word for something that is favored. Because that's essentially what the elite class is. These are families that have historically been favored by, you know, I'm not going to get into like the whole magic system, whatever stuff, but like the magic, right? They're favored. They're favored by the magic that basically controls the hierarchy of their society. So that honorific would definitely like come from that word favored. And I don't know if like the actual like family names would include favorite in it. I feel like that could be a bit repetitive, maybe. I mean, it would probably make it a little bit clearer for the reader, right? If you're seeing those same like suffixes, even like, I mean, I wouldn't want the same suffix in both, so it would have to be different, but it might mean like maybe there'd be a surname suffix that means like favored family where it includes that same root chunk, but it isn't identical, right? Because it's not an honorific, it's part of the name. I could potentially see something like that. And then I would definitely have a root for like sworn to the favored would essentially. Wow, sword. I can't spell. It's fine. It's fine. So sworn to the favored, right, would also be one. And then, you know, you'd have one for unfavored or rejected or whatever that word would actually translate to, right? So I think I would definitely have those. I like the idea of there being an indicator in the family name just because I think readers would pick up on that, right? Like if you have your elite class, and you'd get that pretty easily from context clues, like which families are like noble or elite, you'd pick up on that. You'd pick up on the use of the honorifics. And I think that that pattern would carry over to maybe being able to recognize that in the surnames. So I think that might be a smart thing to do here. I think. So I need to come up with a, let's see, where was I with this? Here we go. Okay, so these are going to be my honorific suffixes, but I think I also need to build the morphemes for them as well, because I just think it makes sense. So Dragon King. I'm not going to have one for the Dragon King because I need to figure out what the actual morphemes are for like Dragon King. And then I can compound that, right, into another word, I guess. But I would definitely have, like, we'll say this means favored, and we'll say sworn. I mean, what would that, okay. Sworn to the favored. How would that actually be ordered? Favored, sworn. I wrote sword again. I don't know why I keep writing sword. But yes, so sworn to the favored is essentially what it would mean. And this more, I guess technically this wouldn't be a morpheme because it would be like, it would basically mean sworn. So maybe I need a separate morpheme for sworn that I would combine here, which wouldn't technically be a morpheme, but it's fine. So I would need that, and then whatever the rejected, like, whatever, oh my god, whatever the rejected, like, actually means, like the root of that, because maybe the betrayer, maybe it means something like betrayer, right? Because it's someone who has left or been kicked out of a family. Swords on the brain. Yes. Yes, actually, swords are on the brain. I was just playing around with, like, mounting my swords back there, and I think I need to take the map down because it looks dumb, even though a lot of the time I won't have the swords up there. That's just so I can keep them off the floor and not have my kids play with them. But yes, swords are always on the brain, honestly. But yes, so we will have, and this will essentially mean like betrayer, honorific, and, you know, we'll build something there. So I need to come up with morphemes for all of these things, right? I need morphemes for it so I can build those. So let's go to my language builder. My main class, actually. And what we are going to do is we are just going to build some words with single syllables. We're going to do that. And we're going to see if we like any of these. Oh no. I have a bug. Array sums to 0. Oh no, I broke something. Where did I break you? Starting or ending syllable with syllables. Does this not handle one syllable? This really should work. I should have done this plenty of times. I don't know why this wouldn't work. Get weight and length. Vowel. Oh, total of 7 vowel clusters. Oh boy. Oh boy, what did I break? I mean, realistically, that's what I actually want. So I can go back and fix the other thing later. But we just want a syllable. Although it's a morpheme, so it's not necessarily... Well, we're building morphemes to be used... I'm just going to say false for both. It won't realistically matter here, right? Because I don't have a lot of validation for specifically those different parts. So let's just run that real quick. No! I broke it. Oh no. Okay, So I must have broken this with something I changed because I just ran this a little bit ago. And the only thing I think I changed was adding this vowel cluster language validation. I don't think I really changed anything that would affect this. So initial clusters, dot stream, filter, if it's allowed, return, that should be fine. I don't know why this wouldn't be fine. Why did I break this? I really wanted to get further than this, but if this is going to be a whole long thing, then I may end this if I can't fix it soon, because I'll have to spend some time fixing it. But I really want to start building out the names. Let's see. Okay, that worked. So yeah, somehow this broke it. So I will fix this later, and we will just remember in our heart of hearts that these are the only allowed vowel clusters. And I will fix this later. That is good. Okay, we got that working. So I'm just going to make a note here that those are the only ones allowed, and we will visually do it for now. That's not what I want. I'm just going to run it again. This is a slightly different version of IDE than I am used to. Okay, so these are potential things that we could use as morphemes to mean this stuff. So we just have to like pick stuff, I guess. So I feel like they should not necessarily be overly short. I didn't play around with anything before. This is the only one that I might keep that I was playing with earlier, where Davka, I was just randomly generating stuff before to try and get a feel for what things we would want. So if I kept that, maybe Davka, which would then be used to build this, which would basically be Davka as a suffix. So then best, because I don't want anything that sounds like that, you know? Streer. Let's see. Favored, so something Streer. I don't hate that, honestly. I think that's an option. It's weird enough to like, you know, I don't want something with like lots of vowels like that. Haj has a feel to it. I think. Lux. I mean, that has like English connotations there, which we could play with that, right? Let's see. Because when I turn them into an honorific, it might make sense if they all end in the same thing. So it's kind of clear, although I want to use a glottal stop to differentiate between them. So they wouldn't be merged with it, right? There'd be a stop in between. So if we pick something that has a onset and a nucleus but no coda, then turning it into the honorific suffix could be applying a coda to it, just so there's a distinction there. Favored. Although then sworn to the favored might end up being too long if it's streer. Steer. I don't want it to be like stir. Stree. What if it was like stree? And then the favored honorific could be like streer. And then sworn to the favored. Okay. Head initial ordering. I can't grammar. So sworn to the favored. Favored, sworn. That would be, which one would be a weird noun thing? I think sworn would still be your main noun. So I think favored to the sworn. No. I think sworn would be the modifier. So I think it would come after. I think. If I'm doing that wrong, let me know. But I think that would be favored and then sworn, I think. So it would be Stree, I don't know, maybe it's like law, Streela? That's like, I don't know, something. Strixa? I kind of like that better. So maybe like XA means sworn, and maybe Stree means favored, and then maybe we add an R to make it an honorific. So that would be Streer, that would be Czar, and I can always come back and again change that. So let's play with that. Let's say that's what we're doing. And then for betrayer, I feel like we want something that has a really different feel to those. So do like that. Tuv, vest, G. There could be Gier, something Gier. I kind of like that actually. It wouldn't mean betrayer, it would mean like betray, right? And then rejected class honorific would essentially mean betrayer. That's what that word would mean. Gier, person who betrays. And would it be oh, good point. Okay, hold on. Let's see. Would it be Dragon King or King Dragon? So it's definitely in English it's the Dragon King, not the King Dragon. So head initial would be king. So it would actually be king then dragon in language. Maybe, right? I think that's how that order works. Where do we have dragon? So I think this would actually be king and then dragon. So it would be, I don't like that as much. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna do that. Because I like that better than Kadav. Davka. I like that better. So we'll go with that. So we have those suffixes now, which what we can do we will say this is our, we're going to just make these constants so that I could use them in the other class and then go back and change them here without having to remember to change them in multiple places. Although honestly, that might end up being a more naturalistic sounding for me to just randomly mess it up sometimes. King is the head, dragon is the dependent. Yes, okay. I am vaguely starting to understand a couple of grammatical concepts. This is growth, people. Okay, king is the head, dragon is the dragon. Wait, which one are we? Wait, which one? We're head initial, right? Head initial? Head initial, king, dragon. Yes. Yes, okay. Fantastic, thank you. Yes, Davka sounds better than Kadav. Yes, I agree. Especially as like a suffix, it's not a word by itself. Like, because then we're starting it with a stop, right? Because it'd be like dash or glottal stop, Davka, versus glottal stop, Kadav, which already has that kind of like stop kind of sound in it. You know, yes, that's what we're going with. So we have elite born honorific. We have elite sworn honorific. And we have betrayer honorific, which betrayer is this. This is this. Born. which I guess essentially what we're saying is that's just the elite class honorific, and then you have an extra thing to say you are sworn to the favored, essentially. Yes. So then I think the next thing to play with after this will be playing around with which diminutives we want to have, which I will need to Google because, yes, we will need to Google that. They will be add-ons. They will not be like changing the end of it or shortening. It's actually going to be making it longer because there's suffixes. What am I doing? What am I doing? Here we go. So, I haven't started a method for adding an honorific, but we will make that real quick. Adding the honorific to a personal name, so that will take the personal name, and then it will take the social class, which I could do something fancy to make this easier and have it built into the social class object, but I'm not going to do that. And we're basically just going to say if the, let's see, if you are the Dragon King, which I don't even know why I need to do this given that it's going to be one person's name, but if your social class is the Dragon King, then we would return the personal name plus the Dragon King honorific, which this is importing it from the wrong place now, but we'll fix that in a minute. And then if it is the elite born, then we will turn the elite born honorific. If it is the elite sworn, there you go. If it's that class, we'll return the correct honorific. Else, if you are of the betrayer, what do we call that? Rejected class. I'll go back and fix that later. We will return that honorific. Then I need to import those from the right place. It automatically did that. And else, you do not get an honorific. You just get your personal name. Okay, so that would be how we would add the honorific onto the personal names, which what I'll kind of do when I'm doing the full name breakdown is like, if I'm like, okay, I want you to generate a name for a social class, it'll show me what that name looks like with the honorifics added or with them not added for the given social class. But I will do that later. And then, so I think that's it for honorifics. Yeah, so we need to determine the honorific suffixes. And now we need to determine the diminutive suffixes, which I think we could probably use a similar, well, I feel like it might make sense in the language for there to be some consistency, which when we were adding a suffix that basically meant like person that is, right, we just added a R, well, to the end of these. We didn't do it for the Dragon King, but the Dragon King's special. That's not like a person that is elite born, that is the person, right? So I think that makes sense for it to not have anything extra, maybe. But it might make sense for even the diminutive suffixes, since they are also like suffixes, to have that as a, I'm sure that's a grammatical, that's a thing. I'm sure there's a word for that. Maybe someone knows. But it might make sense for these to end in R. Okay. Diminutive suffixes usually sound soft. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I mean, I feel like we could do whatever we want here. I mean, it does make sense. So, like, we don't need to be, like, nice with our diminutives either, right? Like, they don't have to be, like, cutesy diminutives. Like, I feel like a lot of the ones are in English, like, or maybe, I don't know. Maybe I don't know that much about diminutives, but I feel like a lot of diminutives are normally nice. Like, you're like, the little so-and-so. Like, I know a little bit of Greek. And there's words like diminutives. I guess they are diminutive suffixes. So if you wanted to I know so little Greek that this is the only thing I can give you, but if you wanted to call someone your little something, like say you wanted to call someone, I don't know another option other than something that's mildly inappropriate for YouTube. Mu means mine as a, I guess, diminutive. Maybe that's not even a diminutive. And then like my little is ikimu. So if we were to say something, I mean, it's not actually inappropriate, but I'm not going to say it in English. But skatikimu is like my little. You can guess what that means. I don't know if that's actually a problem. No, I don't know if that's a problem. I'm just not going to say it. Diminutive affixes of any kind match the terms they are derived from. They're not necessarily soft nor friendly. Right. So I think it would depend on if I wanted to have like a feel for readers to read it where maybe something that is a harsh thing to call someone sounds more harsh. If it's a nice thing to call someone, it sounds less harsh. Like I could do something like that just to make it a little easier for readers to pick up on, potentially. But I'm going to Google, so diminutives. Diminutive options in different languages. So, okay. So, I don't want to know what AI has to says about this. I'm sorry. English has some diminutives, but they're lexicalized from other languages. Oh, those are all kind of funny. We're gonna skip those. Let's see. I don't like any of those. So Scots have like, no, these aren't like diminutives for names. Is there a separate term specifically to me like diminutives for like people? No, 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 no. No. Term endearment you call close friend might even be rude, but in a playful way. Yeah. Like there's we could do a lot of things here that could mean things like in language and match the like culture of the society. I am struggling to find an example list of diminutives, but maybe we go about this a different way. Okay. Let's look at it this way. Let's try, no, because people aren't going to know this. I guess you guys would know. But okay. So, diminutives. I think it would make sense to have, sorry, I keep falling on this thing. I have like this little like rocker thing and I keep slipping off of it because I can't stand still. So for what would come up in the story, right? I don't think there would necessarily be any directly hostile diminutives used, right? Because that's more of an informal thing, and anyone they actually hate, they wouldn't be interacting with in my story in that sort of a context. So let's see. A word or suffix indicates that something is small, right? The diminutives et kitchenette. Yeah, that's true. So something is small. That's a good example. True. Yeah. Like little or young one or something could be like a diminutive. An informal form of the names. Yeah, I don't want to go with the shortened form of the name. I want to add a suffix, just to add general like casualness, maybe. Yeah, so like that could be a thing. It's like Bobby or Bob. Yeah. But I think we should be more like specific with this. Because one of the big tropes is like your typical found family trope where everyone hates each other and then they start to like each other. So the use of diminutives could actually have a plot relevance to showing that change in their relationships with each other, or like something not necessarily nice could become something like that they use just because it's like it becomes something cute at the end, right? So I think we would want something. What kind of things would we want? We could be super general and just have something that's like cute or little or like something like that. I meant literally having two names instead of a suffix. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's true. That's something that we could do. I don't think I'm gonna do that now just because there wouldn't be any, like, that wouldn't come up in my story. You use the informal form. Yeah, the diminutive stuff. Diminutives don't need to be so size, and weight, colors, right? Yeah, right, right. Right. Strength, temperature. Yeah, I only want these to be for people. They also wouldn't come up any other way, like adding diminutives to things, just because like we're other than potentially place names. Like if you were saying this is like the little river, then maybe you would have a diminutive on it. We're not going to get into that. We'll cross that bridge over the little river when we get to it. Um, so I think it makes sense to have like something that is like that you would call like not actually like a little sibling, but that kind of emotion of like uh I don't know, but like so like an implied familial bond that isn't necessarily familial. Maybe. It is pretty hard to have an affix which only applies to humans and nothing else. People naturally apply such terms to. Well, then we could use it. If people want to call the river like the little river or something, we can have a word for that, and then it can apply, and that actually makes things really easy. So I like that. We shall allow that to happen. Um, we do. Yes. So I like the idea of having something for like little sibling that's like a familial like bond that you would say to like a younger sibling, but could be like a friend or someone that you are friendly with but are also in like a mentorship. So like maybe a mentee. Just trying to define ones that would like imply certain amounts of relationships because that really makes sense given the story. I also honestly it might make sense to have diminutives for like that nature society dichotomy there where there's that difference of like things that are with the society, things that are not with the society, that are with nature, like because they will have literally different like societal expectations and norms and requirements and ways they behave depending on which of those like states they're in, right? Like they if they're going off to do things involving nature, they are in a mode of like rejecting society, they will dress differently, like it's sort of like being in mourning, except obviously it's not in mourning, but like there are different social customs surrounding it. So I think it might make sense maybe to have a diminutive when you're talking to someone that is like one with nature, kind of. That sounds weird. Like that, I don't think that's what it would actually like translate to, but could be interesting. Treating it as a familial title might work though, like you said, as something like brought in or married in could be useful, or even just friend or enemy. Yeah, like something like that could be helpful. And I also like I can assume that there would be a lot more of those in my world than the ones that like I will necessarily define it first, because I'll probably just define the ones that I think would make sense to have. And I don't want to have a lot in the story just because it would be hard to come up with. So like or hard to follow for the reader. So I might pick a few that would be easy to pick up on with context clues and then like say I do another story in this world that has different sets of relationships, it could use different diminutives. But yeah, I like the idea of being able to imply that. Could it be something similar to comrade, like as an implication of both equality and cooperation? I feel like that could honestly be another one. Like it would maybe imply a different bond, like a mentee mentor, whereas maybe I have a mentor one too, because there's in the society there's a lot of that concepts of like training up and someone that's helping you and like teaching you things. Like there's a lot of that in the different like organizational structures, so might make sense. But also having one that would be for like comrade, partner, friend, right? Just like a general like teammate, like something like that. I think that would make sense to have also. Work is really reliant on culture's kinship structure too. So yeah, this is where it gets in a little bit more complicated with mine, which is why I think I'm not gonna dive into it too much with the specific kinship structures. Like originally I wanted to have that super well defined, but what's happening in my society right now is they are undergoing a change based on essentially a change in the underlying source of their ideology that reinforces their entire power hierarchy. So the importance of the family, like your specific kinship group, used to be less significant before. And then essentially like I don't want to get into the whole world building, but essentially like family was a thing, but it wasn't a really as important of a thing, right? So like the kinship groups were a little bit smaller. You didn't care as much about your larger extended families. It was still not like super individualistic, like those smaller kinship groups still mattered. But now that the ancestry more and belonging to these large family bloodlines matters a lot more over the last few hundred years, right? Those kinship structures have kind of solidified a lot, expanded more as power has sort of become less centralized and also decentralized to some of those families too. So like the language wouldn't necessarily, I think, have caught up as fast. So I don't know if I would have specific words for that right now. And also, no one's actually going to be interacting much with their families in the story. So it would be not something that would come up a lot. Divergent society was apart, but now apart. Yeah, divergent for was apart, but now apart, and convergent for becoming whole. Yeah, I could go with something like that for what the actual words mean. That could make sense. If you've got a hierarchical culture, yeah. Right, yeah, so that might mean all of those things altogether. Like someone who is either like maybe like a familial bond or a mentorship bond could be used for both kinship and other types of relationships, and then imply that like lesser, greater, older, younger sort of vibe. I like that. So yes, it could be greater slash lesser versus old slash young, because it wouldn't necessarily be an age thing, right? I like that. Partner or mate would, yes, that's true. There needs to be some cutesy ones. There definitely needs to be some like relationship type ones. Yeah, and I could always have that like the direct translation of that means something interesting for the society, right? Like what would you call someone that was your partner? You know, like there could be something where it means like I don't know, like nice flower. I don't know. I'll have to think about what would be culturally significant in terms of the symbolism there, because that would be an interesting place to have world building, is what represents those worlds, you know, or those words. Um, grammatically distinguish between male and female genders. They're not exist in your language. So I don't think there will be any in the original language, right? So in this language we're building, I don't think I'm going to have any grammatical difference between the different genders at all. I don't think. But it is so the way I'm thinking about this, right, is that in theory, it's a fantasy book. It was written in whatever this language was, but it has been translated it back into English. So I'm only actually coming up with the things that like wouldn't have been translated typically. So I think in the English parts, obviously, what in English is gendered would still be gendered. But in terms of people's names, in terms of these relationships, I don't think they would be gendered. I think, if that makes sense. Um, Third gender is usually called neuter or common depending on, yeah. So I don't think I even need to have a concept of gender. Like I'm not having a like noun case or noun class. I can't remember which one it would be for gender. I don't think I need to have it at all. Like I don't think it'll come up in a way where it's necessary. But yeah, so one for couples, and I feel like there could be like I feel like I should come up with, well, I might come up with a couple relationship ones and only use it very sparingly, right? Like I like the idea of having one that's more like a long-term, a more deeper, serious honorific to use for like the love of your life, someone you've spent the last 30 years with or something, right? Versus something that you would use for like, your cute new beau that you've just gone on a couple little dates with. You know what I mean? Like I feel like there could be a more serious versus a more playful, maybe, version of that. And then, okay, so these all imply relationships, right? Which diminutives don't necessarily have to imply relationships, right? So I could have some that imply adjectives almost to a person, right? There could be some of those, or like you can call someone like smarty pants or something like that. But I definitely need to have some like negative ones. We'll say smart Alec, right? Something, you know what that means? We could have something like that. We could have something like, I'm just trying to think of ones that would actually come up for people that hate each other but are trying to work together, but not necessarily in a way where they don't hate each other, that would come up, Maybe diminutive, you call someone you share a promise or oath with, right? Yeah, like I feel like something like that would exist. I wouldn't have that in my story though, just because that wouldn't come up in this specific story, but that could be something I could come up with at some point. But yeah, like special bonds that are like any type of unique bond might have something like that. Related to the tool. Oh, that's clever. I like that. Yeah. Where we can pull in, yeah. So like maybe it means like fated duo. Or like, I mean, I guess if it's you're calling someone something as an honorific, it would maybe be more likely to translate to something like the other half of my duo or something. Something like that in terms of the actual translation of it. But that's a good idea. That's a good idea. One interesting thing to consider, if you have gods or monarchs, do they have a completely separate class of honorifics or a variant of ones used for more earthly relationships? So I think that is a good thing to consider. My cast of characters are never going to interact with the like Dragon King, the ruler, who is at the time of my story essentially become like a puppet leader, and it's the society is actually mostly ruled by the like main ministers of different parts of the government. So I feel like there would be words for that, but I don't need them. So I might not come up with those now, but there would definitely probably be something like that that means like my citizen or like person I protect, or like I feel like there would be something like that. Like it would mean something like that for talking to their people. Let's see. Yes. Okay. So sort of mean things that aren't overtly mean that you could call someone that would potentially be diminutives. God side of things might be relevant if the characters ever pray or otherwise appeal to the gods of their setting or culture. Yes. So I will have to brainstorm exactly how that will play out in terms of the world, because there are goddesses. There's two goddesses, and there is the wind spirits essentially, which are the main things that they directly would relate to, and they would have festivals to honoring them, and that ties into the magic system actually, when they would be talked to, because the language of magic is different, and that's going to be the next thing that's going to be the spell language we're going to be coming up with, which is essentially using commands in this language that is of the people that are magical, right? Of this other realm that is magical. So anytime they're ever talked to or addressed, it would be in that other language, not in their language. So I don't know if I would have anything for them. The goddesses, they might have, like, it might be something that would still be their, would it be in them? I feel like it would be their name for the magic, right? Because them saying the goddesses' names isn't interacting with them from the goddesses' language, right? Like they're not part of that other realm, I think. So they might have special names. I think there would be something for them. I'm gonna make a note for that. Although then again, if I'm only using these in informal settings, there might not be a diminutive. There might be something more of like more of a, what was I saying? Something more of like an honorific. It'd be more of an honorific. So maybe I'll come up with an honorific for goddesses, and then provocative diminutives. Yes, that is what I need. That is what I need. 2 conlangs. Yes. So actually, technically, there's going to be 4, but I already did 2 of those. So basically, what I'm doing is for each like nation that comes into play in the story and has a unique enough like nationality to them that there would be characters directly in the story from those places, I am building a naming language for them. I did this already super simply for the other 2. That was sort of my test of this program. But they're super restricted, and I'm not coming up with like, they don't have honorifics, they don't have anything other than literally just like, these are the sounds and maybe some like one of them is from like a nation in a jungle. So like the only concepts I have in that language is like whether or not you are of a family that's of the jungle or not of a jungle. Like I have a couple little things like that, but they're super simplistic, super basic naming languages. Just so that you can distinguish people that are from these other places versus my main society or nation. And then I will have the language of the people of the story, right? And then there will be the spell language, which will be a more significant conlang, I think, than this one. So I'm kind of trying to go in order of complexity, because that will actually be a language where you are making commands and translating that language, and translating code of that language is part of the plot of the story, where they're trying to figure out how to get the spirits to do things for them. And so they have to use like command statements to do it. So like I will have it won't be a full conlang, but it will be more of a conlang than this language, which is more of a conlang than the other ones, if that makes sense. Oh, negative diminutive nicknames just relating to animals are pretty common. Usually a positively associated animal, putting the nicknamed on the level of the animal. That's an interest. Well, okay. Let's culture here for a second. So my people revere nature. So it might actually be possible that that would actually not be the case in my society. That might actually be a case of using a positive name because they have this deeper connection to nature as part of the baked in like culture and society. So that might actually be more common in my society for positive diminutives potentially. But trying to think if that would be the case or not. Because they definitely revere nature. But it's more about like the balance of nature and the balance of things than specifically nature. Like it's not like they're prioritizing. I'm gonna have to think on that. I will brainstorm on that one. Created / irreversibly changed object for the negative. Object for the negative. I don't know what that means. Like saying something's like broken or something's like wrong, right? Like a diminutive that means that. Is that what you're saying? Let's see. I feel like there'd be something for annoying. feel like there's something that essentially means inconsequential. I feel like that's like rude, sufficiently rude, but not like, right? You know, that could come up. I have to brainstorm a couple more of these. And then I'm coming up with like, how many of these do we have so far? We have definitely something for one with nature versus one with society. So like iron that is irreversibly molten from ore made no. Oh, yeah. That's interesting. So like things that are like very man-made things that are like changed from their raw natural form. I like that. That might make sense. So negatives. Yes, I like that idea. And some color magical meaning variant of your magic Conlang. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, like I feel like I would definitely probably have something like that. Some sort of cursing or profanities or something. Although I'll have to decide for those if those would have been translated because they would probably be single words. So I feel like if you ran across a profanity right in a book and you were translating it, that would probably get translated unless it had a really weird specific meaning that couldn't really be translated. I think the honorifics and the diminutives being suffixes wouldn't have been translated out into like what their meaning in English would be. So, which is part of why I'm building those out specifically and not having them be like separate. Like you wouldn't call someone like annoying, you would use this diminutive. So I would definitely have profanities, and I will have to figure out what those profanities would translate to in English, right? So like I will figure out what would be a profanity in that language, but I will use it in English because I think it would be translated, unless then it becomes a diminutive potentially. But I kind of dislike the idea of having like truly negative things be diminutives. Like calling someone like a smart aleck or annoying or inconsequential, like it's rude, but it's not like super horrible, you know? Like I don't know, like it feels like this is a different like this is saying something about a person, whereas a lot of like profanities are just like we're being profane for profanity's sake, and then we call people that to be extra mean, but it doesn't actually mean anything about the person specifically. Usually, I mean, I guess I could have it do that, but I like the idea of there being a little bit of like difference there. Plus, then I get to actually use profanities, which is always fun in a book to be able to use profanities. If they're not translated into English, then I don't get to use profanities, or no one would know what they are. Oh my gosh. Okay. Let me go with a couple. I am over the amount of time I was planning on spending on this, so I probably need to stop soon. And actually, although I have not heard my kids, I hope they're not still napping. They should not still be napping. My husband probably went and got them at some point, but okay. Okay, let me find a good stopping point. Yes, so we have one with nature, one with society. We have like sort of like this greater or lesser siblings, that's 4. One for an equal cooperative partnership, that's 5. 2 for couples, that's 7. There's no way these are all going to come up in my world. There's no way. I may have to think about that a little bit. I like all these though. Maybe if anything, I'd get rid of this. I'm going to do that. That means maybe I remove it. I'm going to forget that, but and then I think I need like maybe I'll keep it small and I'll do some brainstorming before the next stream for what exactly I want these to be. And then we've already figured out our system of doing diminutives, right? Because they're basically just suffixes that we're adding R to, right? And I could even go in and actually like, or maybe they're not even all ending in R, but like maybe I find a couple of patterns for how they end. and then we will build up the suffix, the diminutive suffixes, and then that will have been everything that I need to do other than actually generating all the things. So then at that point, all we would need to do is actually start generating names and potentially adding a few, like maybe we generate like 20 names. I find ones that I like the feel of, that I think feel pretty cohesive, and then I can change the likelihoods of those different clusters and sounds to give it more of a cohesive feel. And then I can just like go crazy and generate a ton of stuff and get all that fleshed out. And then after that, we will be on to the spell language, which is going to be really interesting. It's going to be a little bit scary because it's going to be real conlanging a little bit. It's going to actually have sentences written out in this other language, and it's actually going to matter, and they will know what it means from the reader's perspective because it will be translated. So that is going to be terrifying. Yes. So I think this is where we're going to leave it today. I think we got pretty far, and I don't think we have that much more to do before actually just generating some stuff. And honestly, generating what these diminutives actually will be is just going to be like another thing, but you have me excited. About the spell language, I hope so. I have like a rough idea of what I want the grammar to be, but I also came up with that in the early days of my conlanging research where I was like, what's an adjective? So the odds are that once I pull that out and look at it, we're all going to be like, ooh, no, that's dumb, and we'll need to tweak it. But I have a rough idea of what that would be. Not any of the specifics, right? More like, I want to do this concept kind of vibe. So I'll have to go through that, see if it's complete crap or decent or something. And then yeah, that'll be fun. I'm excited. Using PHP as a spell language, cause requests. Yeah, I yeah. Can definitely only do can only do this. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. We'll just see. I will make no promises for exactly what it will be, but yes, yes. Thank you, everyone, for helping me out, for providing feedback, for keeping me company while I do this, because this is conlanging is scary for me. So I appreciate the help, and I will schedule another one of these soonish. It'll probably be on a Wednesday, because I'm kind of alternating between the like midday on a weekend to evening on a weekday for me. But yes, so thank you, everyone. I hope you have a great rest of the weekend, and I will see you in the next one. Bye, everybody.